There's a quiet little tradition forming on Headstone, one that I have to admit I did plan, but now I honestly can't imagine this show without it. Every conversation ends with a name, a request from me, and a suggestion from my guests. A gentle, hey, Pete, you need to talk to this person next. And I've learned to trust those handoffs. People don't recommend someone unless that person has carved their initials somewhere meaningful in their life. Today's guest arrives by way of one of my oldest, dearest connections, who you've heard on this show if you're a regular listener, the incomparable Eliza Klein. And when Eliza says, Pete, you need to talk to Chris Schembra, it's not advice, it is a prophecy. It's her way of saying, this one must be in your orbit. And here's the part that feels almost too on the nose to be coincidence. The connection between them, and between all of us really, is food. Eliza built one table around the idea that sharing a meal isn't just nourishment, it's belonging. Chris built an entire movement on the same truth, that when people sit down to break bread, they break open. The fact that these two, of all people, would find each other and that I would end up finding both of them feels like the universe is winking at us from across a shared table. So I started paying attention to Chris. And it didn't take long for me to understand exactly what Eliza meant. If you spend even a few minutes watching him speak or reading his work or exploring the 747 gratitude experience, you feel it. The gravitational pull of someone who has built his life around strengthening the things most of us forget to value. There's the book, the podcast, the pasta, but beneath all of it is a set of beliefs he treats as the architecture of a meaningful life. Here are 4 pillars he's drafted onto his website under the heading, Here's What I Believe. That human connection is the most valuable asset we have. That gratitude isn't just a sentiment, it's a strategy. That slowing down is a superpower in a world that worships hurry. And that the future belongs to the curious, the courageous, and the connected. Now, Chris wouldn't be here if he didn't live those things, and those ideas have carried him onto some very big stages. But here's the thing about big stages. They're powerful, but fleeting. A speech has a shelf life measured in minutes. A keynote leaves a room buzzing, and then hours later, life resumes its shape. Even the best speakers know that their words live in the air, not in stone. Legacy, the kind we talk about on this show, is different. It's slower. It's stickier. It's carved out of the quiet work of becoming who we are. So today we're not starting with the brand or the movement or the keynote-ready origin story. We're going to go back. I want to look at the line from the kid he was to the man who now devotes his life to reminding the rest of us that we belong to one another, and of course, to the footprint he leaves behind when we're gone. I'm Pete Wright, and this is Headstone. And we start where every real story starts, with the people who loved us into being. Chris Schembra, welcome.
You're pretty awesome at this, Pete. You've already got me tearing up and being quite reflective and humble and yeah, just really, I think it's very important for me to be in this podcast right now for what's going on in my life today. And I think it's no accident for who introduced us. And I'm really excited for this conversation.
I'm honored that you're here. I'm honored that you accepted Eliza's connection to me. And I want to figure out how you landed where you are. Because I think with a lot of the people that I have come to love and admire by their work, and I'll say that I have chosen to join their fandom, right? To just be a genuine fan of the work that they do. So much of what they do is the result of what is in a mystery box of their life, right? So much of what they do today is the result of a jumble of things, of accidental, sort of actions and choices that were made all along their life. So I would like to ask you about your very first best friend. Who was your first best friend? Tell me about him.
By the way, if I'm crying, I don't know why. I think a topic we can touch on a lot later is that today I just graduated, even though I'm not fully healed, but I graduated from a concussion rehab vestibular therapy program that I've been in for close to a year. I'm not healed, but they graduated me from the program, and so I think it's pretty reflective day for me. So
it's incredible.
We can touch on that later, but in case anybody's listening to my voice, I'm literally crying already, and it's 4 minutes in. Gosh, how do you define first best friend without offending so many? I'll say that there's a group of us who all graduated from Hilton Head Prep together in 2006.
Okay,
that were called lifers. So you're talking about Andrew Hazel, Randy Free, Willie Cram, Paul and Thomas Light, Chucky Scarmanach, Niles Murphy, Kevin Marlis. And then he had Addison Goss, Simone Bruderer, Rachel Hessling, Laura Stevens, Natasha Viswanathan, Hester Hadi. And the list just, goes out from Elizabeth Brown. It just goes out from there.
It's extraordinary. Just let me just say, just whatever is going on in your brain that requires this the concussion therapy, the ease with which you are able to rattle off that number of names is extraordinary. So I would just like to say that's incredible. You're doing fine. Honor to all of those people.
It's just hard to pick up.
Yeah.
It's just hard to pick one. I mean, maybe I could narrow it down to 4. I'd put, on the male side, it'd be Randy Free and Andrew Hazel.
Yeah.
I actually started a company with them in my early 20s. We were doing different direct marketing initiatives, and we were selling compost tumblers, and we were renting street legal electric golf carts to tourists, and we invested in some accidental Ponzi schemes as well. But that's another thing.
Yeah, right.
But if I had to go on the female side, it'd be Addison Goss and Simone Bruderer. And they've really had my back since a really, really, really young age in a deep way.
What is it that connected you to those people early on? Because I get what connects people to you now. Like, seriously, man, you've obviously rolled an 18 charisma. Like, it's just there's such a natural affinity about you for connecting people and connecting in a super vulnerable way. But you weren't like that when you were 10, were you?
I think the truth of the matter is I don't remember.
Fair.
I was diagnosed with ADHD. You mentioned you have an ADHD podcast. I was diagnosed at the age of 5, and they put me on a lot of medicine at the age of 5. I had to go up to Charleston to Dr. Quisenberry's office. Ned Hallowell had just come out with his book. My mom was the parent, who was in charge of the ADHD circles on the island. So I was in the thick of it,
Yeah.
And so, I guess it narrows down my answer is my childhood best friends were my memory. And that's what makes them so cherished in my life today. They tell me to this day what I was like, what we did, how we had fun. Of course, I remember bits and pieces, but the majority of it's a blur. And I think Randy takes the cake on the memory piece. He is. Did you ever see the movie The Prince of Tides?
I absolutely did.
Nick Nolte
Yes,
and
Nick
Barbara
Nolte.
Streisand,
Yep.
greatest legs in show business,
Incredible.
Nick's, not Barbara's. No, I'm just kidding. Barbara's at that fireplace scene, phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Anyways, first crush. The Prince of Tides is where I'm from. I'm from South Carolina, right? In that thing, Savannah was the broken one who had multiple suicidal and non-suicidal self-injury attempts, which ended her up in the hospital in New York City, where Dr. Lowenstein, Barbara Streisand, was treating her. And Nick Nolte's character, Tom Wingo, Savannah's older brother, had to fly up to New York City to tell the stories of Savannah's childhood to Dr. Lowenstein. And I always joke, but Randy is my memory.
Okay.
And so I guess, of all the four that I just said,
what do you think?
There's that.
If Randy were sitting here right now, how do you think he would characterize you at that age?
Enthusiastic, passionate, maybe lost. Always reaching on out for something.
Yeah.
Hyperactive, generous, loyal. Yeah, I think those kind of things.
One of the things that I know about the era of youth and ADHD that we're talking about is that, and from my youth, I'm a little bit older than you, but from my youth, the kids who I went undiagnosed until I was an adult, and so I spent my youth looking at kids being pulled out of class, carrying assistive devices, keyboards, things like that. And to those of us who watched kids with a diagnosis of ADHD, treatment felt punitive, like they were getting in trouble. And as a result, they were put on medication and they were put on special schedules. And I think just bearing witness to that taught me a lot about how I show up in public, not in ways that I had to later unravel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm curious, you being sort of in it, and the fact that you have your mom is someone who, by your own words, was kind of head of the ADHD circle. I'm curious what you learned about going through that as a kiddo.
Yeah, I mean, my memories of the rooms that I had to learn in, because I would always distract the other kids, whatever class it was. And so, specifically in the lower school, the classrooms had a little room that had a window with a one-way mirror. And that's kind of where I hung out.
Yeah.
I can't say every day. Willie Cram would, slap me and say, dude, your memory's wrong. But, oftentimes when I would be disruptive, they'd put me in those rooms. So, it's pretty isolating, kind of feeling. It's definitely a feeling of envy, of comparison, of developed into anger, that I, still have a horrific time managing. I would have to come home so that I could wake up in my own bed and take my medicine and have a routine because it was very controlled.
Mm-hmm.
I was just actually reminded of this by my friend's mom. So my friend Paul Light got married in Charleston a couple months ago, and I sat down with his mom at the wedding, and she said that, when I would spend the night at their house, Paul and Thomas Light, they're twins, their mom would have to hide all the sugar. But I'd wake her up in the middle of the night saying, do you have any sugar? She said, I used to walk into her room and ask her if she had sugar in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I think my mom and dad were very protective of me sleeping out and spending the night.
Yeah.
And I'd know that all the kids were, again, Willie would hit me for saying this because I was at every party. I was at every sleepover. But for my perceptive, I built this like isolated wall to
Yeah.
convince myself, no, they were off having fun. I was being controlled elsewhere, So I don't know. It kind of wrote something.
I think the connection is, not to be too obvious, but it seems like so much of where you end up today manifests in early expressions of loneliness, right? Like of that feeling of social isolation in public. And I say that relating deeply to it, right? Like I spend all day on a microphone producing podcasts, and I consider myself as somebody who was one of the loneliest kids in high school, right? Like I was an actor. Everybody knew who I was because I was constantly on stage, and yet one of the loneliest kids out there.
The first chapter of my first book was titled, "You Don't Have to Be Alone to Be Lonely."
Yeah.
So you could be on the stage, as you said. You could have all the friends, but you still feel lonely on the inside.
Right.
By the way, shout out to Simone and Addison for letting me come to them at a young age with a lot of confusing ideas, questions about myself, alternative identities, different kinds of experiences. And they would hold space for me to be able to talk through that. And they were really two of my best outlets to bring, these inner questions that I had at a young age. Because, you grew up in the South, and, it's hard to talk elsewhere about those things.
Yeah. Well, tell me about those questions. What are the kinds of things you felt like you were holding private, but, without the gift of grace of these two people?
I mean, I think every kid goes through questions around identity, sexuality, life direction, wants or not wants, frustrations or not frustrations. And just to protect the sanctity of our relationship, I'll leave it at that. But they somehow knew how to let me come and, if I had a weird idea or a weird question, I could bring it to them and they'd hold space for it. And I think that them being 16, 17, and 18, it's pretty ridiculous that they had that capacity.
Let's talk a little bit about mortality. This is, a show, presumably, at some level about death. What's your earliest memory of the kind of loss, the kind of promise that life makes that not everything stays forever?
Even though my dad's dad, who I'm named after, and my mom's mom, even though they passed away prior, I think it was when my third grandparent, my mom's dad, who was living with us at the time, when he passed away on July 3rd, 2001. And he was living with us. He had cancer. And we'd shave in the morning and we'd listen to music in the morning, and I'd help him, fold his flag. And we'd fish. And I mean, in those later years, we just kind of, sit on the back deck, and Patricia would come over and the dog. And, we just kind of talk about life. And I don't really remember the actual conversations. I just remember that I was the one who went to wake him up on the morning that he passed. And then 2 hours later, I was put on a plane to head to Texas to be away from the family during the funeral.
Why was that?
To protect me.
Did you feel protected?
No, I mean, it was definitely weird. Yeah. I went to go visit cousins and missed his funeral. So that was unique.
That I feel like unique is carrying a lot of weight.
Yeah, I just think it was certainly not the way that I expected to mourn.
Yeah, I feel like this is this is an incredibly illustrative point, right? That your first sort of intimate experience with loss of family comes at a time when it sounds like, no judgment, but it sounds like others in the family weren't ready to accept a deeper conversation about death themselves, and thus instinct was to protect you from that conversation. Is that a fair assessment? I don't want to...
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What do you take away from that as a kid? You come back, you go back to the real world, and granddad's not there. How does that influence your understanding of mortality?
Well, I think it got me involved deeper in philanthropy, because soon thereafter I really ramped up all my stuff, and I had really two causes. One was the American Cancer Society that I would go on to, have good fun doing throughout high school and college. I think as a result of my grandfather's cancer. And then Habitat for Humanity, which I went to every single Saturday, the mornings after sitting on the bench at the basketball and football games. That's a whole nother story. But I think his passing probably amped up my own identity around philanthropy. I think that's how I channeled it.
I know you have a tattoo, at least, because I've seen it in pictures. I don't know what it says, don't need to know what it says. But I am really curious, and this is, I'm also a little bit selfish, because for the last 10 years I've been trying to figure out what I want my first tattoo to be. And that's become paralyzing for me. I am curious to know what ended up being important enough for you to permanently mark yourself with it. Who were you when you decided to get marked?
So I have 4. I'll give a brief overview, and then you can ask which one to tell the story around.
Sure.
The first one was on February 14th, 2009. I was living in Los Angeles at my 3rd rehab, and I met a gal at a traffic stop whose name was Brooke. And we started hanging out, and she took me to the Venice boardwalk because she had 50 tattoos. She was a rich horse lady with 50 tattoos. And she took me to the Venice boardwalk to get my first tattoo. They were supposed to charge her $63, but they only charged her $6.30. So we went for sushi after to celebrate. And that's the pause symbol. Stop and think about what I do before I do it. So the second one came on March 14th, 2009. Me and Logan Bradley, we went to go watch Randy Faree, that childhood friend.
Sure.
He played rugby for Auburn University, and they were playing the United States Army. And, Logan and I wanted to go watch him, fight the Army. And, which, you shouldn't do, especially if you're a smaller country, or if you're Auburn. So Logan and I snuck away during the rugby match. He got a palm tree and a crescent symbol, in honor of his friend Mike DeVincentis, who had passed away. And I got a circle and a triangle, which is the symbol of the Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yes.
My third tattoo was something I got on April 26, 2009. I was 11 and a half months sober. Brooke, the 50 tattoo girl that I met at the traffic light, who bought me the tattoo on Venice Boardwalk, happened to visit me in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. And we went to the tattoo parlor because she always likes getting tattoos. And long story short, I struck up a deal with the tattoo artist that if she, Brooke, let him, Gavin, give her an illicit tattoo in a private place, I would get a tattoo for free. And so I got the Serenity Prayer tattooed on my arm, as a way to hold on to sobriety and fight the good fight. Off we go into the wild blue yonder. So I broke my sobriety the very next day.
Goodness.
Yeah, Paula Dean's restaurant was serving the newly released Firefly vodka, and I just couldn't fight the power.
What an incredible opportunity to explore something I did not expect to ask you. And by way of segue, right, I look at tattoos as, they're the 50 tattoo person, Brooke. I'm honestly, body is a work of art. That's extraordinary. I think the tattoos, the smaller scale tattoos tend to be more of, are they either a reminder of who you are at the time you get them or an aspiration of who you want to become? You have just described at least one of them that sounds a lot like the latter, which offers us an opportunity for me to ask, tell me about your journey through recovery.
Well, I checked into my first rehab on May 14th, 2008. In the woods of Utah. Well, the journey to rehab involved, jail, suspended from school, kicked off campus, malevolent behavior, all those kind of things.
Was this college, high school?
Sophomore in college, or freshman and sophomore in college, a number of, malevolent behavior. And so, which culminated in, my dad getting the call from our friend Paul, not Paul Light, but a different Paul, from a hotel in the Bahamas where myself and my kind of quasi sister Rachel, we were spring breaking my sophomore year in college. And Paul observed me and called at my dad and said, "Hey, all that behavior that you've been, trying to look at from afar of Christopher, I just saw it up close during this trip to the Bahamas. Yeah, he needs to go away." And so Debbie Lyons assisted my parents in getting me into a wilderness rehab facility in the woods of Utah. I checked in on May 14th, 2008. I got drunk with Randy the day before at Frosty Frog Cafe in Coligny. And so that first rehab was 42 days, 2 months in the wilderness. And they took me off my Adderall, and, I got to meet some other, fuck ups like Mitch Doty, who's, become a dear lifelong friend since. And we just went through the rehab program, and we had to bust fire, and we had to walk from, place to place. It was a program that had originally been called Wilderness Conquest. It was originally a program to help convicts assimilate back into society. And they just dropped the convict part and just put a bunch of fucked up kids and said, "Here, figure out how to live." So that was the first rehab, Wilderness Quest.
Were they leading you through, it wasn't specifically a substance.
It was essentially look at a map and get from point A to point B over the course of the next 5 days, because when you get there, you'll get new food. But figure out how to do it. And there's staff supervisors to make sure you don't get lost or don't get eaten.
Yeah.
And there's some challenges along the way.
Yeah.
And here's a jar of peanut butter that we'll give you every Tuesday. Learn how to, I had to learn. I mean, the most challenging thing of my life at that point was to learn how to ration peanut butter. Because it only came on Tuesdays, and peanut butter is my favorite thing in the world. I'm like Ted Lasso. I keep jars of it, and then I just, So add a little brown sugar to that peanut butter, and that shit's going down fast. It's going down really fast.
All right. So I can already predict that your first 2 months in the woods was probably not the recipe for speeding you toward a life of recovery.
I mean, look, they made us, pledge our allegiance to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
They make you say, "Hi, I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic," on like the second day.
Yeah.
What I think the biggest thing that they accomplished is that they cold turkeyed me off Adderall on my 31st day in the wilderness, because I only checked into the wilderness with a 30-day supply of medicine.
Yeah.
And so on the 31st day, they said, "No more medicine for you, smiley face."
Wow.
And I said, oh, I haven't done this since I was 5. I mean, I hadn't been off medicine since I was 5. Oh, this should be new. So I think that was the main accomplishment.
Okay. Next 30 days were rough.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
My body got used to it eventually. I mean, the first 4 days I didn't move. I was pretty much comatose.
Yeah.
My body hadn't actually produced a natural form of energy in like 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
So the second rehab was in Port Townsend, Washington.
Okay.
On the Olympic Peninsula. And Mitch followed me there. Mitch Doty followed me there. He was 6 days after me. It was a rolling admission, kind of the woods. So like Mitch and Joe Kirk, they showed up 6 days after me. And so, I graduated. Actually, I kind of failed out, but that's a theme. But I went off to Wilderness Quest, and then lo and behold, Mitch joined me 6 days later at Wilderness Quest. And I had my walking stick from the woods, and I wanted to prove to everybody at Great Wolf Ranch, right in the the rainforest of Port Townsend, Washington. There's this 5-star luxury kind of rehab for 16 boys, and with tree houses and smoking pits and all these wonderful things. And I would carry around my walking stick to prove to everybody how tough I was. My counselor's name was Judd. He saw right through my bullshit the entire time. In 5 months of being at that rehab, you're supposed to maybe every month and a half, you're supposed to prove how good you are. And if you're good, they'll kind of move you to a room that's like maybe a little bit farther away from the main lodge, little independence,
How does one prove how good you are on a monthly basis?
Oh, you pledge allegiance to Alcoholics Anonymous. You get a job in town, or you go to school. You get good grades. You play nice. Say all the right things to the counselors. Reveal your soul. Get vulnerable, and they'll be like, "Yeah, this kid's making progress."
Do you? How much of it? To what degree over the course of your time there did you find you internalized any of this, or does it feel like it was just to a great extent performative?
Oh yeah, it was all for me performative. I didn't actually lean in.
Okay.
I leaned into the relationships. Taylor Lanier, Mitch Doty, Jeff. All these guys. John Walker. But I don't know. I didn't tell Judd probably an ounce of truth, and he'll probably tell you that to this day.
Yeah.
The only ounce of truth that I probably told was my relationship with Donna, Dana. She was like an associate, around the rehab, and she would drive us on the bus to places, into town, to your volunteer work, to the restaurant, to wherever you needed to go. And her, I probably talked to her the most about real stuff.
At some point, how long have you been sober today?
3 days.
3 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it? How do you characterize your experience with alcohol, substances today?
Well, as the first line of the book I pledge allegiance to, The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first line states, alcohol is but a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not addicted to alcohol. I'm addicted to chaos. I'm addicted to self-loathing. I'm addicted to, new stimuli. I'm addicted to the perception that others have of me. And those things kind of might actually be a greater net negative to my life than freaking alcohol. Right? I'm an addict. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm an addict. And that will never change. Do I have more tools in my life now to regulate the emotions that typically trigger an addictive response? Yeah, a few more tools.
Mm-hmm.
Am I perfect with them? Nope.
Yeah.
But I drink.
You dropped earlier that you have a persistent struggle with rage.
Yes.
You're an angry guy?
Yeah, I'd say I'm an angry guy, for sure. For sure.
The perception I have of you is one of incredible grace and kindness, external kindness.
Yeah. Because I know how to control that rage to a certain degree better than I used to. But yeah, very short fuse, especially to the people that I love.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it stems from feeling not seen in certain avenues of life and having that anger be directed towards others instead of my own inability to communicate that way that I want to be seen, right? So it's all about blaming others and then seeking justification for that behavior. It's about looking at the world and saying, you're wrong, I'm right. You did something to me, I had no part in it. I'm better than you, so I deserve special treatment. Or my trauma is bigger than yours, so I deserve special. It's we all go through that stuff.
Yeah, there's a soup. Yeah.
Right? Right. There's a whole book about it. It's called The Anatomy of Peace. It's a international bestseller in conflict resolution for decades. And it's the story about 6 sets of parents dropping their kids off to a wilderness rehab facility in the woods of Utah.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Pretty close to home.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rehab is owned by an Israeli Jew and a Palestinian Arab. Both their fathers were killed by each other's ethnic tribes.
Yeah.
But they found peace. And they welcome in these parents. They put the kids out in the woods and they welcome in the parents and essentially say to the parents, your kid's not the fuck up. You are.
Mm-hmm.
In order to see the change you want to see in them, first you have to make the change within yourself. And so it goes through a big process of describing how most of us see the world. Our default is to have a heart of war. And it's up to us to do the courageous, inconvenient acts to obtain a heart of peace. Because only when we obtain that heart of peace can we then go out and build authentic relationships. Can we listen and learn to the experiences of others? Can we teach and communicate how we want to be seen or the problem we want to fix? And only after that can we correct or fix the problem that needs to be solved. If you skip any of those steps, that's what looks like anger, addiction, envy, comparison, greed, whatever.
Yeah.
That's when you steamroll others. I'm really good at steamrolling others because I'm great at negotiation.
Do you remember when you decided this is a particular skill set that I have and a tool set that I have built and regulating my own inner struggle, inner rage, the complex organism that is Schembra, to become someone who decides, I think I need to devote my time and space and blood and toil to helping others get through this stuff?
I guess it comes down to when pasta sauce came into my life.
Okay.
I mean, there's obviously stories of me helping people when I'm a kid, or there's stories of me trying to help people, as a young adult. There's, stories of, my, urge to want to help others in a certain way in theater, that whole like career in my early 20s. But I don't know. I think it all, a lifetime of stories that would be fine stories to tell today, a lifetime of those, they all kind of culminate when pasta sauce came into my life. And then it all just lined up. And then it became this animalistic hunger.
Yeah. You have talked about the origin story of pasta sauce of 747 many times, and I don't necessarily want to. I don't need the entire story, but just for setting context, can you run me through it?
Yeah. At a lonely, dark chapter in my life, because as we said earlier, you don't have to be alone to be lonely. Life looked great on paper at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I woke up one day realizing it didn't feel so good in the heart. And very long story short, in that darkness, which, when I'm in a dark place, I tend to do bad stuff.
Yeah.
Non-suicidal self-injury, multiple stints in rehab, jail, lifelong depression.
Clear, you've got the curriculum vitae for that.
Yeah, I figured I should probably claw my way out of this little hole at the time. And I just happened to be sitting on the edge of my Murphy bed in a 300 square foot studio apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I looked across to my 2-burner stove, a tiny ass little kitchen with a pull-out fridge. Mm-hmm. And I said, let me cook. Very long story short, I invented a pasta sauce recipe. Simple red sauce, a little spicy. And I decided to feed it to people to see if it's even good or not. And I decided to host a dinner party. July 15th, 2015, I invited 15 of my friends that didn't know each other, complete strangers to each other, over to my home for a simple bowl of pasta sauce, where we worked together to create the meal. We had a shared group experience. We served each other. I asked a very deep question. Everybody cried. They love my pasta sauce. And I've been chasing that feeling of human connection ever since. That's the long story short.
Yeah. That's and satisfies the stories of filling the void of addiction to that signal.
There's a TED Talk, a man by the name of Johann Hari, who once said, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's human connection. Yeah, I was drinking wine at all those dinners.
Yeah.
But I was surrounded by people having a really deep and genuine life experience. It did a lot for me.
At the dinner table with a bunch of people who don't know each other, which is the most important seat?
The center of the table, not the ends, the center of the table. And the second most important seat is who you put directly across from you at the center on the other side. There's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David accidentally puts Richard Kind, a great comedian, but puts Richard Kind in that very important middle seat. And Richard Kind spends the entire episode just talking across to his wife, but never talking to the left or to the right. Larry David calls him a bad middle.
Yes.
So a good middle, right in that center seat, has to pull in the energy from both sides of the table into them. That's where I would sit.
All of the videos that I have seen, all of the clips of you hosting these dinners, you put yourself in the middle. There is an enormous emotional responsibility. And we'll say Curb is a fantastic tutorial on how to be a good middle. It's a great episode. The weight of being that person personally on you, is that gotten easy?
I'd say it's harder for me to be the weight of being that person in one-on-one settings than it is being that for groups of people. because, yeah, I love the word empathy, but I don't think I have good empathy. Empathy requires you to step into the shoes of the other person to understand their feelings and perspectives, and then use that knowledge to guide your action.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I step fully. And maybe this is an ADHD response. Maybe this is a fear of intimacy. Maybe this is the performative nature of what I do. Maybe this is just self-preservation. I don't lean in fully to the emotion. Again, maybe it's a form of self-protection. Oh, I'm present. I'm there. But I'm less burdened by the emotion of the storyteller. And I'm more concerned by keeping the container safe as a whole, whether it's with 1,000 people or 100 people or 16 people.
Yeah.
I can't afford to go as deep as I can't afford to go the full depth. I don't know. So it's not as hard as it sounds.
But it does reflect the preciousness of the group, right? The preciousness of being kindling to something bigger, even if that something bigger is a table with 15 people sitting around you. There is the responsibility, that weight of you as a caretaker of that conversation. At what point do you take off the table's training wheels and just let it ride?
True. Yeah. I feel the emotional weight of the pressure of putting on a good experience more than the emotional weight of an individual. And I've gotten to be pretty good at doing these things. You know, I've got a couple reps under my belt. Mm-hmm. And so when an experience doesn't hit, that hits me hard for weeks.
That RSD, right? Rejection sensitive dysphoria, right? The experience, that is an ADHD thing pretty seriously, the thing where we tend to perseverate on those negative experiences to a maladaptive degree.
RSD?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There you go. All right. We need to transition as we get toward landing this particular plane toward some of the legacy stuff. And I've been itching to start talking about this because I think what you have landed into yourself, right? Being a speaker, being somebody who teaches others how to do these things is, as I said in the open, I think it's a really interesting sort of choice, right? You speak to giant rooms of people who are moved and energized and inspired, and yet inspiration is so fragile and can fade quickly. So I'd like to know how you put yourself into that space to do work that is so deeply meaningful and yet temporary.
The silly, simple answer that I'll just get out of the way is to, productize our services and come out with books and training materials and quizzes and articles and all those kind of things. But I think the deeper answer that I'm actually probably just thinking about for the first time, so I thank you for asking, the true work and the lasting stickiness should not involve me. I believe that the true work and lasting impact of our work should be on the people to go off and build great relationships with each other, and that be the lasting legacy piece. My goal is to help people connect in a meaningful way, right? I'm not a content creator. I'm not, I am.
We all are, right? At some level.
Prolific. Sure. But I mean, that's not what I'm jazzed up about. I don't really care that you walk away with a 5-part framework that I did teach and hope that sticks. I care that you somehow cried thinking about your grandfather who served in World War II next to someone you never thought you'd ever talk to who also happen to have a grandfather that served in World War II, and now you're friends for life. That's the legacy.
Yeah.
That's the work.
Why gratitude?
Well,
I should say specifically, why gratitude? Why now?
the gratitude piece technically started in theater. We were traveling around the world producing a one-man play about Fiorello LaGuardia, former mayor of New York City. I was the producer, and my business partner / father figure / boss was a guy by the name of Tony. He was the actor, director, writer. And we were the dynamic duo. We're the unlikely duo. At the time, he was 78. I was 27.
Okay.
And we had this play, and we would read a poem that his brother John asked us or gave us to read. We would read a poem at the end of every play. It's called A Soldier Died Today. It was about giving gratitude to veterans. Yeah. And gratitude. Stephen and Ellen Klaus came along and said we should turn this poem into a short film. To which Tony and his wife Elise said yes. So we made a 5-minute and 35-second video giving thanks, tribute, gratitude to our veterans. And we released it on Memorial Day 2015. We picked 16 different independent Facebook pages who had huge followings that were friends of ours, gave them the video footage, and said, upload this as if it's your own. Don't tag us at all. We don't want no credit. Mm-hmm. I said, ooh, it's like authentic gratitude, not wanting the credit for the piece. So that video went massively viral. It's got tens of millions of views. It's got over 2 million shares. We won 2 Emmy Awards with it. It's a good piece. Just a Common Soldier. So that's May of 2015. We'd just come back from producing a Broadway play in Italy. We put out this viral gratitude piece to the universe. And then I host my very first dinner on July 15, 2015. And at that first dinner, at 7:47 p.m., I pause the entire dinner table conversation and I make it up on the spot. Pete, I asked them a simple question. If you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, or that you've never thought to thank, who would that be? And it worked, Pete. And so we just kept on doing it. And that's it. It's just a product of happenstance.
It's such a glorious circumstance too. Like I get that feeling in my chest where I have to laugh at the response to that question, because if I don't, it'll come out as a sob. Like it is a feeling that hits me right in the solar plexus, just hearing your voice ask that question. That's incredibly powerful.
What's coming up for you?
Well, shit, Chris. I went to college with a bunch of guys. We were in an a cappella group, and there were 7 of us who started the group, and the group has continued for the last several decades. 150 guys have come through there, but the original 7 of us from that group have stayed very, very close. And 2 weeks ago, we get a call that one of ours has had a relapse of lymphoma, and the chemo caused some stress to his brain. And over the course of about 5 days, his brain and his spine went to Swiss cheese, and he was dead. We the remainder of us dropped everything and flew to L.A. to be with him at his bedside and to sing him off. And that's what comes up. Like the first thing that comes up is, what did I forget to say to Daniel, right? Because we didn't get to speak to him. He was already far enough gone that he was not lucid by the time we got there. We got 2.5 days with him, just being present, holding his hand. But that question of why didn't I make that last phone call a month ago when I was thinking about it? Why didn't I? Why didn't I? Why didn't I? And the truth is, what so much of this conversation reflects for me is my reflection is that I am grateful for the time I did have, and much less shamed for the things I didn't do. And it's hard to choke all those words out. So I did not expect this on this conversation either, but I appreciate it. I'm grateful for it.
Well, it does, Daniel. If Daniel was on this podcast with you right now, what would you say?
I'd remind him that he is a complicated dude who owes others nothing in exchange for the love that we give him. And he's been a dear friend for 30 years, and we'll never forget that.
Cheers to Daniel.
Cheers to Daniel. May the road rise to meet you.
There. Ooh.
That is the Irish blessing, and we had arranged it, in 1996 to sing off members who were leaving the group. We would stand in a circle around them and sing them this song together, and then they would move out of the city or whatever. We never in a million bazillion years imagined we're going to be singing this to somebody at the end of their life, because when we arranged this, we were going to live forever. Never once did we have a question of mortality, not in those moments, not in those days. We were all powerful. We were young. We were strong. And here we are, looking at one of our own in a state of the most feeble. And we have an opportunity to give the gift of that message back on their way out. So that's what comes up for me when you ask that question. And I appreciate it.
Thanks for going there.
That is unexpected, dude. That is an unexpected place.
I hope you come to expect more of those moments in your life, because I think it's the fabric of living.
You feel it. I ask this question at the end of every episode. It is important to me as it started kind of as a gimmick, but I use it as a reflection because I think it's important as a device to let us think about how we want to be remembered. What would you like on your headstone?
I keep thinking of the word permission. That I gave people permission to be themselves. And remember what it is they need to remember about themselves. Help people remember what a great blessing it is to be alive.
You gave me that today. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I am honored by your willingness to come and sit down and talk to this joker you've never met and be as vulnerable as you are. You're a beautiful dude. I appreciate you so much.
Well, shout out to Eliza Klein, who, I think, I don't remember researching you. I just remember Eliza saying that you were fine. And, that counted for enough. Yeah. And I think that's the power of relationships. And I think that's the power of Eliza having lived a life worth remembering.
For sure.
And, yeah.
Here's what I keep turning over now that the microphones have cooled. Chris and I recorded this as the last conversation of our first season. That was months ago. The episode has been sitting dormant on my drive, finished and unedited for longer than I care to admit. I owe an explanation for the gap because this show is supposed to be about looking squarely at the things we would rather not. I told myself I was busy. I'm always busy. That is not the reason. The reason is that I was afraid of the last 15 minutes. I knew what was recorded. I knew Chris had turned my own question back on me, and I knew what I had said. And I did not know who I would be when I finally sat down to hear it again. There is a cowardice in avoiding the sound of your own voice, and over the past few months, I've gotten very good at it. I came into the conversation thinking I was going to trace a line, kid to man, wound to work, the tidy architecture of a life that ends up on a website under the heading, "Here's what I believe." And Chris gave me all of that. The lifers from Hilton Head, the isolation room with the one-way mirror, the peanut butter rationed on Tuesdays in the woods of Utah. 4 tattoos, each one a small flag planted in a year he was surviving. But somewhere around the mark of 747, the conversation I planned quietly handed the wheel to the conversation I didn't. Because Chris does not traffic in gratitude the way the keynote circuit wants him to. He traffics in permission. Permission to take the middle seat and pull a whole table toward its center. Permission to be an angry guy sometimes and a gracious one in the same breath. Permission to say out loud on day 3 of sobriety that he is an addict and always will be, and that the work was never to be cured, it was to be connected. And then he asked me what was coming up. Every episode of the show ends with a name, a guest handing me the next person I'm meant to find. This one ended with a name too, only it was mine to carry, not to pass along. Daniel. When I finally queued up that section this week, I braced for it, and here's the thing nobody warns you about grief: recorded. It didn't break me the way I feared. It met me. Listening to myself say his name, listening to Chris hold the room steady while I came apart a little, I understood that the fear had been bigger than the feeling the whole time. The thing I'd been running from for months was a gift that had already been handed to me, and I simply had not let myself open it. This is the strange mercy of a good middle. He didn't climb all the way down into my sadness with me. He kept the container safe and let me feel it anyway. It took me a whole season to be brave enough to receive it. So, if you take one thing out of this hour, take his answer to that last question. Just one word, carved where it counts. Permission. Permission to be ourselves and to remember what a blessing it is to be alive. We started the season with the people who loved us into being, and we are ending it with the ones we still have time to love back. That's it. This has been the final episode of the first season of Headstone. And yes, that implication is accurate. There will be more episodes of Headstone to come. I have more names on the list, and I am very excited to continue these conversations and continue them in spirit of so many of the lessons that I've learned out of this season. So please stay subscribed. Don't leave. Keep hanging out. More is on the way. And, maybe pick up the phone and call that one person that you've been meaning to call. It's time to stop waiting. I'm Pete Wright, and thanks for joining me around the Headstone.